Good morning, this is Don Thornton. I'm Don the Short Sale Guy. I'm also known as Don the Grant Guy because I help people get $10,000 worth of free ads on Google every month. Today I want to talk about the absolute necessity of learning to love the process and not the results. And that sounds weird. I know that I always struggled with that in my career because it's funny because even though I accuse myself of being a recovering negative-aholic, actually, my nature is very optimistic. It's one of the reasons why I will always be open to another side hustle or another project I think that makes money, and I go into it fully expecting to make money. And unfortunately, over the last 20 years, usually it doesn't make that much money, and a lot of it is because I decide that historically I've quit too soon, or historically I didn't know how to do it like I do now. If the projects I started back in, even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I didn't have any online skills. I didn't know anything. So once I got through my friends and family or my sphere of influence, I didn't know how to do anything. Which is so ironic because I am such a good cold marketer in real estate investing. You get me a foreclosure list and I'm all over it. And I know exactly how to do that. But, when I was doing, I was trying to sell an HGH gel. I didn't know how to do it. You reach the point where it's like, okay, now what? And how to do that without doing online marketing was just like, I don't know. I actually even had a idea to buy one of those Arnold Schwarzenegger muscle costumes and stand on a street corner and say, you want this body? Ask me how. And that's how weird it was. Now, of course, I didn't do that because I had much more important things to do. I actually thought about hiring a guy, but then, the problem is when you hire someone like that is that you got to watch them to make sure they're actually doing the work. Otherwise, anyone who's willing to put on a muscle suit and stand out in the Florida heat and dance around and hold up a sign, most likely, if you don't have eyes on them, they're gonna take it off and then come back to you 8 hours later and say, okay, pay me. So that's absurd. But I didn't know how to do it online. Now I do. For the last 3 months, last 3 years, I have been doing this religiously, learning how to work online, how to brand myself, how to use websites and social media and email and all this stuff. And I'm much better at it now than I was before. But getting back to the process as opposed to the result. Okay. In my real estate career, when I was first trying to break through, I thought nothing of the idea that I could get just one closing, and I would have been thrilled to get $3,000 on one closing. The very first closing I got was $13,071.35. How do I know that? Because I memorized it. I didn't memorize it. I framed it. My very first check from the title company, and it was amazing. And I thought to myself, the entire time, I started in 2022. Okay, so I didn't get my first check until February of 2004. So the entire calendar year. Well, I started in March 2002. So I went basically almost 2 years without getting a closing on my own. Now think about that, okay? And I spent all that time, all that anguish, fighting my demons, fighting my self-doubt, and listen, fighting the doubt from my family because they were convinced that I wasn't gonna be able to make it, and I was wasting my time. So I had so much negativity around me that frankly, it's a wonder that I was able to persevere. And I really think that sheer desperation was the only thing that kept me going because I reached into my rope. I did not know how to make money and I did not want to work for anybody. So the only way I motivated myself eventually, because my family was in Russia, I hadn't seen them for over a year. I think it was 18 months from the time I saw them until I saw them again. And I had a young son who had 2 cerebral hemorrhages during or after his birth. And so, I couldn't go to Russia to see him. I didn't have any money. And he was growing up without me, and my wife would send me pictures every now and then. And so I just printed out a picture and I put it on my dashboard. And so I made a vow that I was going to knock on every single foreclosure door in 4 counties every week and offer to buy their house. And whenever I thought about quitting, whenever I thought about, well, I'll just leave these 5 for tomorrow, I would look at that picture of my boy, my baby boy, and I would say, no, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. So thankfully, it's a great blessing now, but the desperation was probably the biggest factor to keeping my motivation up, because I otherwise I would have probably quit. And I don't know if you're in that level of desperation right now, but I know that it certainly helped me. But let's start talking about getting back to my main theme, which is how you want to love the process and not the result. And this is a long tangent, but I'm getting to my point here right now. I dreamt of that closing. I thought nothing of that closing. And when I sat in the parking lot looking at that check after the closing, I literally broke down and cried. I was sobbing because I couldn't believe that I actually made that kind of money and that it was actually possible. And I called my friends, I called my wife, I called everybody, and I was just like, wow, isn't this amazing? It's so great, blah, 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 blah. And it lasted for 24 hours. And then the next day, it was like, I felt let down. Can you believe that? I felt let down. It's like, wow, okay, cool. So it's crazy, right? I mean, and my dream was to be able to do real estate, not just full time, but make tons of money at it. And I remember in 2004, after I broke through, I made almost $800,000 that year. And I remember at the end of the year, and I was getting my taxes ready, and I looked at those numbers, and we had traveled, and it was like I bought a Mercedes, and I did all the stuff you dream about, and it was like, okay, that's cool, I guess, and I remember I was an avid tennis player, and when you start out as in the amateur United States Tennis Association, USTA leagues or tournaments, I started out as a 3-5, which is not very good, but I had the money, so then I started working with a tennis pro, and we started working on getting my game better. And then in 2004, my goal was in 2004. By the end of 2004, I wanted to be the number one 4.0 tennis player, points wise, in Florida. And so I worked every day on getting my backhand better, getting my volleys better, getting in better shape. And I remember at the end of the process, when the end of year rankings came out, I was number one, and I felt like so great. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. For a day, it was like, okay, now what? That's cool. Now what do I do? And so I said, okay, I want to do the same thing for 4-5. So I'm going to start working on the 4-5 level. I did that. And I worked hard, and I got better and better and better. And I won all these tournaments. I was number one in 4.5. Then it was like, okay, now what? And then it was like, okay, my goal is to make it to 5-0 and win a tournament. And so I got so good at tennis. Here I am. I was in my 40s, and I was beating 22-year-olds, college players, and it felt great for an hour after I beat them. And it was like, okay, well, now what? I won a 5-0 tennis tournament. It was so great. Okay, now what? Right? And so I realized about myself was that, the end result is not nirvana. The end result is not going to all of a sudden make me a complete person. It's not like Jerry Maguire, that scene when he and Renee Zellweger are in the elevator, and this deaf couple are with them, and they look at each other full of love, and they do the "you complete me" sign, and Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger are looking at each other because they don't have that level of love or whatever, and I always thought to myself, gosh, it'd be great to have someone say they complete me. And, I'm not saying that I reached that goal, but I'm just saying that sometimes, people think that the result is where the happiness comes from. And I have really learned throughout my career. And honestly, being an entrepreneur is like therapy. It's like a personal growth workshop. It's like a boot camp for self-development. because it exposes all your raw faults and your character defects, and you have to become a better person. You have to become a better people person. You have to become a better organized person. You have to think about others. You have to, focus on providing value to other people to get them interested in what you're doing. You cannot fake it till you make it. This stuff has to happen. But I'm telling you, you have to fall in love with the process. The process is where the satisfaction comes from. I am so much more happy when I'm in the middle of building something than I am when it's built. If you ask me right now where my passion is, it's not getting 10 houses a month or 15 houses a month in my real estate investing business. It's not getting the closings. I mean, listen, the closings are awesome. I love the money, but it doesn't drive me. It doesn't get my motor running. I am much more stoked and more excited about taking my business national, moving out of Florida and getting my short sale business and nationally, and working with everybody, all these investors throughout 50 states, and having people think of Don the Short Sale brand everywhere. That is much more fun to me than the business I've had for 20 years. That's just my nature. And if you're like me, then you're going to understand that that's probably going to have resonance with you too. So my advice to you is to focus on the process. Love it. Fall in love with it. Get excited about every day you're doing something towards your goal. And then when you hit your goal, then pivot and go to the next goal and fall in love with that process. That's my advice for you today. And thank you again for being on my podcast. I love having listeners. Make sure you subscribe, and you get notifications for my next podcast drop. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks.